If you were looking at yourself in the eyes when you were first deciding to acquire this operation, what piece of advice would you give yourself?
We took out every dime we could to put every ounce blood, sweat, and tears into this business.
The last thing you started delegating was the owner relations. How were you able to successfully delegate that?
I went to my team and I said, you know what? We don't know what this is. I'm taking a risk. We're going to offer full cancellations, no cancellation fees. We reissued $563,000 in refunds.
What do you think has not been solved in this industry from technology or provider perspective? Interesting. And what I find interesting is that, there's initiatives that pay off relatively fast, and then there's initiatives that you need to spend hours and hours, months and months, maybe even years and years, and you don't necessarily see, oh well, I got this many properties out of, this many networking events or community involvement initiatives, or whatever. So how did you manage to make, the difference between those that were showing good traction, but where as fast as it is to get them going, it is to no longer have them be your main source, versus the more long lasting ones, like developing that local presence and that local brand, where maybe you're looking at your month end numbers and you're seeing, well, nothing came from me doing this one thing, yet you kept doing it for, a couple of years, and now everyone knows you.
Right. So being a past financial advisor, seeking the ROI, right? It drove me crazy. A lot of it's trial and error. I mean, you've got to figure those things out. But some of it is, and this may sound egotistical, my wife and I just have a knack for knowing things that work. I guess it's kind of like there was that old movie Keeping Up with the Joneses. Like we tend to be the Joneses wherever we live. People tend to want to follow and flow to what we're doing. I wish I could, if I'd be a multimillionaire if I could write that in a book and sell it to people, obviously. Um, but yeah, we just knew the social was working. We knew people, social, you could see that, right? You could see somebody saying, who's a good management company? I recommend Beach Ball. You could see that the or the owner reaching out to us and us having the conversation. I mean, that was easy ROI to follow. The harder stuff is like we're the sponsors for the kids confetti drop at the wharf. It's a big New Year's Eve day. The kids come out at noon. They drop confetti. There's kids events. We pay a hefty price tag for that. We also at the wharf, same event venue, we're the 4th of July party, right? I can't put a dollar amount that says I know somebody saw my name on a sign and they signed up with us. However, I know if I don't continue to do that event, my name will fade away. One of the things I see in marketing all the time, Sebastian, is if a company doesn't market, you almost think they're going out of business, or you don't know where they are. They need to stay out in front of you, right? I give you an example, one that caught my attention lately. Everybody knows 5 hour energy shots, right? They used to run those cheesy, low production commercials, 5 hour energy, be some grandma on a motorcycle doing a shot, right? Whatever. When's the last time you saw a 5 hour energy commercial? I mean, I haven't in a long time, but they're still in the convenience store. They're still there, but I don't think to buy them because I don't see their commercials anymore. Right. That goes back to my alluding to the whole McDonald's thing about you've just got to be consistent. And it's hard for me to answer that too because we didn't miss much. There weren't many things that we felt that we put money into that didn't pay off in one way or another.
So you were seeing the business come in, and so it was one of the many things you were doing. So let's just keep doing them all.
Correct. And some of it was our timing too. If you think we purchased the book of business at the end of 2016, we rolled through 2017, but we also didn't know that the market was headed on the trajectory it was heading on to. And those first 2 to 3 years, we were growing, but the cannon really, fired off 2020 and COVID. So one thing that we did, and this is a moment in time, and I'm glad now that it's come to my memory on this. When COVID first happened, right? None of us knew what was going on. We didn't know if this was shelter for 2 weeks. Was this going to carry on for 2 years? There was just all kinds of information out there. And at the time, Beach Ball had a cancellation fee. And we started to have guests and this is before beaches were closed, before the panic was really set in. People weren't to cancel. And I was listening to my customer service team, and they were just constantly fighting with these guests over the cancellation fee. And I can't believe you would do this. And this is so after two or three of those conversations, I went to my team and I said, you know what? We don't know what this is. I'm taking a risk. We're going to offer full cancellations, no cancellation fees. If somebody's uncomfortable with coming down here during COVID, do what you got to do. And I remember the time we reissued or issued, it was like $563,000 in refunds over that time. And at the same time, two or three of my competitors were digging in. We're still going to hold your money, or we're going to hold 25%, or we're going to see what this happens. And just a lot of misinformation and things going out there. When they opened the beaches back up, the narrative was beach ball took care of their people. Beach ball issued full refunds. Beach ball didn't do people the wrong way. And that was another one of those like aha moments that people were like, those are good folks. They take care of you. And it blasted the other companies that were, I'm not knocking them for what they did. I got lucky and made the right decision, right? I mean, I could have given all my money away and gone bankrupt at the same time. But I think back to that moment, it gave us so much goodwill in the community. It gave us so many different things that people believed in us and believed in our caring and our culture.
Yeah, doing the right thing because it's the right thing. When it comes to the growth that you guys kept having, what about your role as a leader in terms of where you decide to spend your time? I'm sure it evolved. Can you walk us through sort of the timeline of how you have seen the role that you play as a leader throughout the phases of growth that you've gone through?
Absolutely. So, as I alluded to earlier, in the early days, I was everything. I did anything, everything, but my strength was the sales department. So that evolved over the first 2 to 3 years, really into kind of the COVID years. I was lead sales, handled all the sales, and then I was the financials. I was doing all the accounting. I did owner relations, anything that came to dealing with owners, keeping owners happy, making sure they were paid, making sure we were getting paid. And then Ginger was more marketing, and if you want to call it HR, because she had legal, she was HR, and Jeremy was customer service. And I guess back then it wasn't really called revenue management; it was just called guess the pricing, right? Try to get bookings. So really, after about 21, that was when I kind of started to peel myself out of accounting. I got me a bookkeeper and a personal assistant to start paying all the bills for me, because it was such a frustration to, gosh, I've got to get into the office today and I've got to go, write these 10 checks. And I remember my wife being like, why are you having to go do this? Like, your time is better spent here. So I let that go over time. Owner relations, a couple of years ago, I've kind of passed that off. I've got 2 owner relations managers now. And now I don't even really, I do the high profile selling, but where I am today is I'm a manager of managers. I'm truly the CEO of the operation. We have a chief marketing officer, chief sales officer, and chief operating officer. If you want to call it Ginger chief legal officer, you can. But ultimately, they now are doing the jobs I used to do. And we meet, I mean, we're talking daily, but we meet once a week and we go over all the different departments, how everything's intertwined. And we have our housekeeping manager zooms in, and they go over the 4 pillars, of what's going on, and then what the problems are and where they need us to help. Because I tell all my employees, like, a mechanic can't do his job without his tools. If you need tools, if you need dual screens, if you need a piece of software that will help make your job easier, whatever you need, let me analyze, research, reach out into the market, find out if it's valuable or not. So truly, that's where I am now. And I'm starting to look at that kind of that 30,000 foot view, or what are other things we can get into? Like I mentioned, getting into Florida. We're pushing our real estate a little bit harder now. I've got a side business that somebody's working on me. So now it's more that managing of people, but because I did all those things, I know their pain points. I know their issues. I know their concerns. I mean, right now today, we have an employee that, unfortunately, they are not seeing the vision of why we're expanding, and they don't see the growth, and they're having trouble with the growing pains. And I am now letting my managers handle that instead of me getting as involved as I used to, because I'm a bleeding heart. And if I get too involved, there has to be some of that separation, right? And if I need to get involved, I'll get involved. But the goal is to let the managers do their thing, let them get, I give them all autonomy, and I want them all to grow as managers and become better people. And as they continue to grow, there'll be more revenue share, whatever that may be, to make them be better.
Hmm. One of the last things, actually, the last thing you mentioned in terms of the things you started delegating was the owner relations component, and I hear a lot of property managers struggle to delegate that, specifically because the founder has been that point of contact since the beginning on the sales side, and then on the owner relations and account management side. How were you able to successfully delegate that?
If you remember me saying earlier in the podcast, I said, we didn't have a bunch of bad habits, right? We didn't come with bad habits. And one thing, and this is not a knock to anybody that's listed on the industry. If that's the way they built their business, that's their business. But this is what I found works for me. So many of people in our industry hire a property manager, and that property manager manages this section of the book, right? So you may have a property manager that only manages, these 50 condos in this specific building, this specific area, or this property manager is only for houses, or and then underneath that property manager is a tier system, right? Well, I got to thinking, well, what happens if that property manager, gets hit by a bus and we have to replace them? Or what if they quit or they get out of the industry? And now I've got to bring another person outside of my organization. And then I've got to elevate somebody and have all this, shuffling. So instead, what we are is we're kind of a reverse funnel. Everything filters in through the customer service department. And I don't have your traditional reservationist at $12, $15 an hour. These are higher paid employees because they're problem solvers. And that goes back to what I talked about earlier. It's like, do I want them answering the phone, solving these problems, or can I use their resources better? And then they flush out where it needs to go. So what I mean by that is, guest calls in, oh, it's a cleaning complaint. Can you tell me more about it? Can you send us pictures so we can analyze it so we can get somebody out there? Well, instead of calling owner relations or calling me, they're going to go straight to the housekeeping manager. Same way if it was an owner. If an owner calls in and an owner says, hey, I can't find my ironing board, right? We're going to send that straight to housekeeping, and they're going to go back and track, did we see that ironing board? Was it not there? Do we need a refund? So I've given that autonomy there. So instead of going through all these channels or finding a property manager, we're going straight to the source. Then every department head, they have a backup. So if they ever leave or something happens or they need a 3-day vacation, there's somebody that knows their job well enough to do the job at 75% and keep us afloat. A perfect example is we had another owner relations manager that ended up having to leave the company. Well, instead of me being in a panic, like, oh no, what are we going to do? The other owner relations manager and my broker slid in, basically filled the gap. We sent out an email to all the owners and said, hey, so-and-so's still here. This person's left. It's unfortunate, but if you need anything, email these two people. And oh, by the way, Hunter's always here. You know how many emails I got? Like 2. They got the people. And that's another thing. We're big on coaching our owners, sending out newsletters. I did a video today. We're constantly educating on our owners on how the best way for them to get to us. We use streamlined property management software. Owners can go into their app and make requests. They can make maintenance requests. If you are an outward reaching employee, whether it's maintenance director, owner relations manager, they all have a cell phone, a business cell phone through our business. One, that's just to protect us. So we're recording calls, text messages. If they ever leave, they don't try to steal all your customers or steal your info or badmouth you or anything like that. But it also makes sure that we know that an owner can call the owner relations manager directly if they need a quick answer, or they can email owner relations. We don't like the filtration system. We like get to the root point, right? And that's why I feel like we've been able to expand. So as we're growing, I'm like, okay, we're big enough now. This owner relations manager is probably more than they can handle. I just need to bring another owner relations manager to catch. And then the other thing I noticed by having a couple owner relations manager, personalities are going to find their fit, right? They may not like this, owner didn't like the answer they gave on one particular day, but they heard from this person and this is who they love. And then they'll start working with that person. So part of that is just helping you find personality fits. And I want my owner relation managers, and every one of these different managers has a different personality type that's going to gel. I mean, my housekeeping manager, she's very A. She's very A type. She's very to the point. She's to the point where I'm like, come on, you got to be a little sweeter to these people. She's more like, hey, was the unit clean? Yes. Okay, let's move on. My maintenance guy, he's a typical vet. You know, he's got the tattoos all over him. He could talk to you in a bar room just as fine, or he can sit there and work on your engine on your car, or he can, fix your electricity in your house. He's multitasking. So I've got a lot of my people that are contractors or worked in contract. They're going to call Philip before they call me, or they call any of my other staff. So it's about finding those personalities. It's about spreading the peanut butter evenly and not putting too much on one particular person, as opposed to potting people groups. And then you have these different groups out there all not necessarily competing, but they're not all communicating. And finally, we're big proponents of Slack. We have multiple Slack channels. And I tell everybody in the office, over communicate, never under communicate. The first thing that gets you in trouble here is not communicating. If you don't let everybody know where you're at, where you need to be, or what's going on with certain property, which even for me as CEO, enough with the Slack and enough overhearing stuff in meetings, I usually know about 90% of what's going on around here. So when an owner calls me, I'm not caught with, my pants down, because I don't know what they're talking about.
Hmm. Interesting. No, that's definitely an interesting structure. It's a more resilient one. It doesn't depend on one piece to run. If someone leaves, like, it's not gonna all fall apart. But the reason I
Mm-hmm.
was insisting on the owner relations, it takes this weird mix of both being good with people and have a little bit of a sales personality, but at the same
Yep.
time you have to be very able to draw a line and almost have a tough skin to be able to take whatever comes your way. So it's not very natural combination of skills, I feel.
Mm-hmm.
So I
It
wonder if
is.
you train for it, or if you just try to find people that are extraordinary in that sense and already have that combination of skills.
So it's both. So one, I'm a huge proponent for culture index. I don't know if you're familiar, but culture index is just like DISC, or it's similar to DISC or Myers Briggs or the Enneagram. Um, Ultimately, we work with our trainer, and we explain to our trainer, which I've gotten pretty good at it myself, but this is what the role is, and this is what the day-to-day operations, this is what the weekly, this is what the monthly, and we'll sit there and work on what profile will fit best. So, like for owner relations, we have found the best profile is traditionally an administrative type person. They tend to be more autonomous, they tend to be more social, they're a little less patient, but they're detail oriented, right? So you've got somebody that can work independent. They're going to be a little bit more warm. They're not going to hide behind their computer screen. They're actually going to talk to owners. They're impatient, so they're going to kind of try to move fast on things, but they're detail oriented. They want to make sure the details. They're the kind of people you see with just spreadsheets on spreadsheets, and you think they're crazy, but it's all in their badness. So our owner relations manager, our head owner relations manager, is an admin person. So first of all, we know they have the culture. We know they have that. We know they have it in here, right, to do that operation. Then for the first week, they essentially are in my hip pocket, as I say. So I will follow their email alongs that are coming in, and I will say, okay, this is how we answer this, and we have our procedure book. And but again, it's always evolving, always changing. But I also give them the autonomy that, like, there's nothing you can. This is not life or death. We're not playing with live bullets. This isn't warfare. If an owner calls you and cusses you out, like, I'll fire that owner. Like, I'm not going to have somebody cuss you out over something, right? Like, you're always going to be defended by me. I'm always, even when you mess up, I'm going to defend you. I tell all my employees that. My employees have seen it firsthand. But if they say something email incorrect, or maybe, I'm just going to correct them behind the scenes and straighten them out. And usually what I found is within about 2 to 3 weeks, enough of them hearing the culture, hearing how we talk, hear how I'm answering things, they eventually start to get it. And then maybe I'll get one email a week, and then one email every couple of weeks. And then usually by about a quarter into it, 4 months, they're taking off and running with it. They do have certain, financial autonomy that they can give back to an owner. Prime example, today we had an issue. An owner emailed me and said, why do I have this $25 charge on my account? I don't know. Good question. So I went back, I reached out, I found out what happened. We had a cleaner show up. The owner's daughter was still in there running late. So we pay our cleaners a $25 trip fee for the inconvenience, right? That owner should have let us know they were going to be late. And in theory, we should probably charge them for not following protocol. However, I'm not going to get rich off $25 late fees, but I will go poor off of upsetting an owner over a $25 late fee because her daughter didn't know better than to leave. So what did I do? I went in, I showed our one of our new trainees. I said, look, you're going to let this 25 go. I hope you understand. I'm not going to be upset with you for letting this 25 go. I'm not going to go broke over this 25, but don't lose an owner over this. So she now knows that if it's within like $25 and it's something trivial like that, Hunter's not going to get mad. Now, if there were 300 owners all got charged 25 and it was because we went and placed something out there, then no, you got to stand your ground. So they have to know the moments when to stand their ground, and that goes back to them researching back with maintenance and housekeeping, whatever department. I always tell them, I said, the first thing is identify the issue, go find out what happened along the line, and then come back and resolve it. I'm not expecting you to give quick answers to these owners. And then I set boundaries for my owner relations team. Don't, I tell them don't answer phone calls. I don't answer phone calls after 7 p.m. Unless you're, fire, flood, or blood. Unless your building's on fire, it's flooding, or somebody's been murdered in the building, it can probably be addressed in the morning. And I try to teach my staff the same thing. I'm like, now look, if you feel the urge that you need to take care of something for someone, that's on you. I'm telling you as the owner, I myself don't do this past a certain time. So it's about setting the boundaries, setting the expectation, knowing the culture. But ultimately, I got to know you've got it between here, before I can put you into that role.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that answers
Absolutely.
it.
Yeah,
There's a
no.
little bit of secret magic in the back end that I've got and identifying people, but that's the flow that it should go.
Yeah, no, I love how you played it out. You mentioned too that some of the things you do on the owner education side, for retention purposes and whatnot, also has to do with webinars. You're going to educate your owners on certain things. What does that look like in terms of the retention effort, especially as it starts to be a portfolio in the hundreds?
Mm-hmm.
Churn will be a thing that will need to be managed and kept under control. So how have you gone about keep your owners engaged so that you don't lose them?
Perfect example today. I literally shot a webinar a couple hours before we got on this. So right now, Labor Day just happened this past weekend. We're rolling into the slow season. We've got one more bump of fall break, and then it's the dog days of winter for us, right? Well, I know personally we are sending out postcards, cold emails, flyers, anything, everything we can to get in front of these owners' attention to tell them why we're the best on the market. Now, beach ball, we never try to sell with income. That's never my push. We're a holistic company that's going to take care of you in every aspect of your property. Are we good? Yes. Do we beat the market? Yes. But I never lead with that, right? I also know all my competitors are sending these same flyers and these same emails out during this time of year. So we use a company called Key Data. And what Key Data does is it shows me exactly what the market did and what we did compared to the market. So my call today was really just a, hey, hope everything's great. Yes, we're watching the storm out in the Gulf. We appreciate you being a beach baller. That's another thing. We name our clients beach ballers. We make you feel like you're part of this community. You're part of something, right? So I thank the beach ballers. I explained to them that a couple of staffing changes. I explained a couple of, education pieces on who to email in certain situations and about the owner portal. But the guts of it was I literally the hardcore data shared my screen, how we won the summer, how we won Labor Day, and how we're winning the fall. I don't care what email you got, what flyer you got, what your neighbor said. This is what actually happened. And that's part of my re-recruiting effort. And retention for us, I mean, you may think I'm crazy. I can count on one hand how many people have said, Hunter, you're fired. Most situations are a sale. The new buyer decides to go somewhere else, or they're buying something and it's already at another property manager. That's really most of our churn. I've actually lost 3 this year because the owners decided to move down here and move into their house. So I can't really kick them out for that. But rarely is it y'all just failed so much. I just can't stand it. Now on the flip side, have we fired owners? Sure. We've had issues, and that's a hard conversation. My rule of thumb is if you're ugly to my staff and you're ugly to me and your property's not producing, it's much easier, letting you go than, produce, somebody that's doing well. But I do have a rule. If you cuss my staff, it's automatic expulsion. You're out. Like, you're just not going to talk to people that, and I'm not going to talk to people that way, and I'm not going to talk to you the way. We're adults and we're respectful and we're in business together. I'm not, we're not your servants here, right? So that's my goal, and that's what I try doing for retention. And that's one of the reasons we've rapidly grown like we have, is because we'll bring in 50 to lose five, and I can live with that.
How often do you do those webinars?
I do them quarterly. I try to do one around the 1st of September, around the 1st of December. Try to do one. So if you think about the way our map goes, December is usually, hey, we're going into the dog days. It's cold. It's slow. I just want to kind of recap how the fall went, and here's how we look for snowbirds. And then my next one will be March 1st. So at March 1st, it's like, hey, the snowbirds have moved out. It's spring break. The weather's warming up. Here's where we stack up for the spring. And then I'll do one in June. So June is like, hey, summer's here. Here's how spring went. Here's how we look. So it's more about, let's recap where we were and let's see how we look compared to the market. And I typically am going to pull out the data, and I'm going to show the wins, and another thing about me, I'm not afraid to show the warts. Like, if we have a weakness, or there's something, or some outside threat, or something's hit us, like, I'm going to tell people about it. And I think that honesty is one of the reasons people will stick with us, even if their property didn't produce in a year where they thought it should. They know they're going to get the truth out of Hunter. They know they're going to get their property taken care of. They know it's going to be maintained well.
When, in terms of number of properties that you had under management, when did you start doing this one to many versus, one on one? This is no longer something that I can do one on one, and you started putting in place the webinar format.
That was last year. Last year, when I think we're probably at 225 to 230ish, something like that. I just realized that I had to get the messaging out there. I couldn't sit there and send individual emails. And the other thing I was tracking was, we were sending emails out, but the read receipts were low. But if I sent a video, they would go up. People wanted to watch a video. They wanted to see my face. And again, that goes back to, I joke about the beach ball. I'm not just a face behind the beach ball. I'm here. It's actually my face. I'm actually in my office. I'm working day in and day out. I'm giving it my all, as opposed to some email that could have been written by my assistant and sent out. So it shows that I'm committed. I'm here. That I'm just as much a beach baller as they are.
Hunter, if you were looking at yourself in the eyes when you were deciding to acquire this operation, what piece of advice would you give yourself in order to make sure that you do end up making it where you ended up making it?
So I'll give you two. One's going to make you laugh, and one's the truth. One, I should have listened to my wife more earlier. And two, I wish we'd have started the cleaning operation sooner. I did not realize what a backlog that was, and I know not everybody has the means. I get that when I throw that out there, but for us personally, having that control over the cleans, having that quality control, it's done numbers for our business, and it's helped us grow too. That people know that that's something that's going to be taken care of. That we're all encompassing. We literally have the entire umbrella of real estate to cover you down here on the Alabama Gulf Coast.
So you would have taken housekeeping in-house?
I've taken housekeeping sooner. It's probably an arrogant statement, but we did a lot of things right on the front end, and we grew like we did, and there weren't many pitfalls. We were very confident in ourselves. Again, we didn't know we were going to get as big as we were, but we knew we would get to a point. But I look back now and go, if we had done housekeeping sooner, it would have helped from some sleepless nights. That's the housekeeping department. That's going to be the answer. And listen to my wife more. I should keep my mouth shut, because several times she'll tell me things and I'll shake my head and then later go back and go, she was right.
Hunter, just what's ahead, both for you as well as for the industry? What do you see when you look ahead?
So right now, for beach ball, it's getting into that Florida market, growing that Florida market, and continue to expand. Right now, our goal is to get to 500 properties. When we get to 500 properties, reevaluate, see what's broken in the system, and see if we want to push further. I have no ambition to sell. I get about a once a quarter inquiry from somebody, but I'm 38 years old. My wife's 35. We have a 5-year old and a 3-year old. She, 5-year old just started kindergarten. So one, I wouldn't even know my evaluation based on how rapidly we're growing. Secondly, if I sold, what would I do with my time? That's me. As far as the industry, you're going to see a lot of then you're going to see some consolidation. I think you go back to 21, 22, arms race for technology. Everybody and their brother was trying to create the new tech that was going to fix. But one thing I've learned is we're like the Webster's dictionary. It feels like you're constantly, there's new words, you're constantly having to evolve. So if you're trying to build a software system today, you're already 10 years behind. It's a tough road to hoe, so to speak. That's why you're starting to see some of these acquisitions and these players moving around. And right now you got two major players, but what would happen if a third player stepped into the industry? And I'm also seeing a lot of my peers are peeling back on those tech stacks. They're realizing this overlap this one and this overlap this, and I'm paying for three different things that this one only does this thing good, but I'm paying for all this other. So I think you're going to see more consolidation. You're going to see more people probably get back to their roots of who they are, using what tech does help them. But I don't think you're going to see as many people just gushing over everything. I'll give you an example right now that everybody talks about AI, Chat GPT, AI. We've been hearing for 18 months, all these companies are going to solve all our problems with AI, and I ain't found one that's going to do it yet. Right. And they're still trying to figure it out. So that's part of what I think gives us all concern is like everybody says they have this solution and then it crumbles to the ground. And I won't name any names, but any of your listeners can do research and know some of the companies I've talked about that have way over promised and way under delivered. And it's got a lot of a shell shot. And you're seeing a lot of people just kind of sit on the egg right now and just see how the next 12 to 24 months plays out.
Hmm. And on that note about vendors and tech stacks and whatnot, do you think what do you think is missing? What do you think has not been solved in this industry from a
Uh,
technology or?
the biggest concern I personally have is just customer service, right? You've got tech companies trying to build tech, but then they talk to layman like me, like, oh, you just don't understand the technology, or they put you in a roulette wheel of who you're going to get back to. I also think a lot of the tech people just don't have a full, if you think about this industry 20, 25 years ago, it was just a bunch of mom and pops handing keys out to people and cleaning stuff. I mean, the hotel industry was way ahead of us, and we're trying to catch up with hundreds of years of hotel type stuff. And we're such a fractionalized group. I give you an example. I've got, I know a company that's trying to build a PMS right now, and they came to me and they were asking me questions like you're asking. And I said, stop. I said, stop what you're doing right now. I said, was it 73% of property management companies in the United States manage 50 properties or less? Three quarters, think about it. Three quarters of property managers manage 50 properties or less. I'm an anomaly. 350 properties, 325 properties puts me in the top 2 to 3 percentile, right? Don't create your product for me. Create a product that's solid for all the small entrepreneurs, mom and pops, and then build plugins for me that will solve my problems. Instead, everybody's trying to solve my problems and they're getting up to MVP, and then they get the MVP and they oversell me. And then I get on there and I realize what a disaster this is. That's what I think the problem in the industry is everybody's trying to chase the big whales. Everybody wants the big property management because they feel like, because they can go to Verma or they can go to IMN or they can go to Dorm and say, we signed up Beach Ball Properties, or we signed up Southern Comfort, or we signed up if somebody, big out there. We set up Brett Robinson, whoever it may be. And then they use that as their whole marketing shtick because they landed a whale, right? But at the end game, they don't have the back end built out. Build it out for the small guys and then focus on us, because there's 2 or 3 solutions out there that can serve us right now today. That would be my suggestion to the industry. And you got to get some more middle management, because you got aggressive salespeople and techies, and there's no conduit in between for them to communicate with one another. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm. And then do you think about developing in house in terms of some technology?
Absolutely not. I know how much it costs to build a website. I can't imagine what it would cost to build the in-house. Now we do have some apps that we're working on that we're going to pull off of our API and use some uh, Excel spreadsheet things to build out just to have our own internal app. But no way do I have any stomach for trying to build a property management software or an
So you're
OTA.
clear. You're clear on what you are and what you are not. Amazing. All right. Well, Hunter, this has been great. Thank you so much for the time. I could keep you here for another couple of hours, believe me, but I won't. I won't do that disservice to you. It has been great to have you on. Thank you so much. Where can people connect and stay in touch?
So we own the domain beachball.com. That was my Christmas present to myself back at the end of last year. My email is hunter@beachball.com. Our phone number is 251-968-8896. And as I always end every podcast or anything, I always tell people to come have a ball at the beach.
I love it. Thank you so much, Hunter. It was great to have you on.
Absolutely. Thank you.